So I snuck the laptop away from Mrs. King and decided to make the next video on my own. So we're going to talk about dividing decimals by whole numbers in this lesson. So just like all the rest of them, get your notes page started, start a fresh page, and get our title, our learning standard, and our I can statement written down for us. So dividing decimals by whole numbers, we're going to try to divide those decimals, and then our I can statement, I can divide a decimal by a whole number and correctly place the decimal in my answer. All right, when you're ready, we'll jump into the lesson here. First part is how to set up a division problem. A lot of our problems are going to be written out something like this: 354 and 67 hundredths divided by 13. The key is which number goes where in our division problem. So the way to remember is the first number, that's the amount we have. We have 354.67 of something. It's being divided up into 13 groups. So the first number is what goes inside. It's what's being divided. It's our dividend. The divisor is the second number. That's the number that goes out front. It's the one doing the dividing. So 354 and 67 hundredths divided by 13. So make sure you get all of this jotted down in your notes. Now we're ready to go ahead and actually do some dividing here. So here's our two rules. When dividing a decimal by a whole number, divide just like you would with a regular whole number. All we're going to do is we're going to slide the decimal point in the dividend straight up into our quotient. So here's what that means. First number is what goes on the inside, 7.5, and it's going to be divided by 3. So the first thing we do when we're ready to do the problem, just slide that decimal point up into our answer. It just slides straight up, and then we just divide. 3 goes into 7 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. We subtract, we get 1. Bring down our next number. Notice I didn't bring down the decimal point. I'm not worried about the decimal point once I place it in my answer. 3 goes into 15 5 times, which gives me 15. I have 0 left over, so I'm done. So in this case, it divided just like it normally would. All we had to do was slide that decimal up into our answer. Now, not every problem is going to end with a nice 0 left over at the end. It's not always going to divide out nicely. But here's the thing. We don't do remainders anymore. Remainders are no longer allowed. Because in a real world situation, there's no such thing as, oh, it would do 7 of them and then we'd have a remainder of 3. We want to know what our real answer is going to be, which means we're not going to stop dividing anymore. What we do instead, as we'll see in this example, is we're just going to keep adding zeros and keep dividing until we get to our answer. So let's try this one together. 3.49, and we're going to divide it by 4. So 3.49 goes on the inside. 4 goes out front. It's what's doing the dividing. We're going to slide our decimal point up into our answer, and then we're going to go ahead and divide. 4 goes into 3 0 times. So now I'm going to look at the first 2 digits, 34. 4 goes into 34 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. Subtract, I get 2, and I bring down my 9. 4 goes into 29 7 times, which is 28. Subtract, and I have 1. Normally, this is where we would have just stopped and said a remainder of 1, but we don't want to stop anymore. We want to keep dividing. The problem is we don't have anything that we can bring down to keep dividing here. But ask yourself a question. What can you add as many of them as you want to the end of a decimal and never change that actual number? Hopefully you said a 0. A 0 at the end of a decimal means nothing. It didn't change the amount, but it did give us an extra digit to bring down so we can keep dividing. Now instead of a 1, we have a 10. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract, I get 2. So I'm still not done. So I kick in another 0. Bring it down and keep dividing. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20. I'm hitting the bottom of the screen, but here we finally get 0 left over. So there was no more numbers to bring down, and we were left with 0 at the end, so we are done. 4 goes into 3.49, 0.8725 for an answer. We're going to take a look at 2 more examples. If you feel like you know what you're doing on these or want to try these on your own, pause, try them for yourself, Then hit play, compare your answers with mine. If you're not quite ready to jump into that yet, that's okay. Follow along with me as I do the problems. So first thing, the first number goes on the inside. So 9.48. The 5 is the divisor, it goes out front. First step, slide that decimal up into our answer, and then we're ready to go ahead and divide. 5 goes into 9 one time, which is 5. I subtract to get 4. Bring down my next number. 5 goes into 44 8 times, which is 40. Subtract to get a 4, and I bring down the 8. 5 goes into 48 9 times, which is 45. Subtract, I have 3 left over. So I can't stop dividing because I still have that 3 down there. But what I can do is I can add a 0 to the end of my number here. It doesn't change the amount that was there, but now it gives me an extra digit to go ahead and keep dividing. 5 goes into 36 times. 5 times 6 is 30. And now I do have 0 left over, so I can go ahead and stop. So my answer was 1.896. So we don't stop just because we run out of digits. Instead, we keep adding zeros to the end of our decimal until we get to the end of the problem. We keep dividing as long as we need to. Next one, 55.8 divided by 6. So hopefully you're starting to pick up on it. The 55.8 goes on the inside. 6 goes on the outside. Before we start dividing, just slide that decimal point into our answer so we can't forget about it later. Now I go ahead and divide. 6 goes into 5. Well, I can't do that. So I look at 55. 6 goes into 55 9 times, which is 54. Then I go ahead and I subtract. 54 minus 4 is 1. Bring down my 8. 6 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. And I get 0 left over. Because I don't have any more numbers to bring down, and I have a leftover of 0 down here, we can go ahead and stop. In this case, I didn't need to add anything else. It divided out nicely, and I got an answer of 9.3. Hopefully you feel a little bit more comfortable with how to divide with our decimals. Really, it's just slide that decimal into our answer, and then add extra zeros to the end of the decimal if we need to go ahead and keep dividing. But we'll talk about this a little bit more in class the next time we see each other. So be ready to go.